Alrighty. We are on YouTube. Yay. Not exactly sure how long it takes for it to show up, but boy, I'm sure I'm happy to be here with you all. Let's make sure this is out of the way, off the screen. We are on YouTube. Yay. Not exactly. Mute that. And now I will be able to see the chat nicely. And should anybody decide to join us, and I hope you do, put this over here so I can see what's happening in the chat queue. So by all means, please say hello, say something, tell me that you're here, where you're from. And if this is the first time you've joined me on Satsang, please, by all means, let me know that. It's always really gratifying for me to see new people come. Parmi, hi Parmi. Namaste, brothers and sisters from the UK. Good to see you and listen to you. There's Ava from Poland. So I guess everybody's hearing me okay. And, you know, I did get started a couple minutes late, so people will be coming along. Oh, look, we have a question already from Wouter Oosting. Where are you from, Wouter? It's always nice to know. Before I get started into the questions, as people are joining, I always like to remind everyone that the atmosphere of satsang, the environment, the energy behind it is not one of gaining knowledge and information. It's about discovering things for yourself, discovering things, coming to see things for yourself, seeing what's true. You know, when you recognized, you know, that 2 + 2 = 4 and not 3, you didn't require any discipline to let go of 2 + 2 = 3. Right? You know, in even more advanced formulas, the more you saw that they were true, the more they just kind of stuck with you and you knew they were true. Now, the big difference between that, a bit of intellectual knowledge like that you see, and existential knowledge that is represented in satsang is that the habit patterns, unlike, you know, 2 + 2 = 4, you never again are deceived by the fact that 2 + 2 = 3, and it never actually even arises. But that's not quite the same when you're talking about habitual patterns in the nervous system that do arise, that are still engaged in the idea that 2 + 2 = 3. So the end result is that we can get very confused that when we see something as true, and then we we get confused because the old belief is still active in the nervous system. This is the point I try to make over and over and over again. And many of you were on my workshop that I did, the free workshop I did on Thursday, entitled Inner Reconciliation, the Gentle Pathway Home to Living Your True Nature. I'm doing it again on Tuesday at like 7 o'clock at night in New York, which is like, you know, midnight in London, but like 7, 8, 9 in the morning in Australia. That's why I rearranged it. But the recording from Thursday is still available, as will be the recording from Tuesday. So if you haven't listened to that, I go into great detail as to how the nervous system functions, why there is this disconnect that takes place, and why that habit energy just kind of keeps going, and what we can do about it. That's what inner reconciliation is all about. So if you want to listen to that, this one or the next one or both, just go to gpwalsh.com/IR2019. Matter of fact, I will type it into here. .com/IR2019. It's free. I'm not even asking for a donation this time. Just to show up and listen. I think it'll be very, very, very valuable for you. So again, making the point that the thing that confuses us is that even though we see it very, very deeply, those old, sometimes ancient patterns of behavior and reaction are still quite active. I mean, my watershed moment, which I refer to as my night on the bridge, where this broke wide open for me when I was 19 years old. It was a total shock to me to realize that my life just didn't fall into nice lockstep behind it. The dysfunction, the ignorance, the stupid things, habits kept reemerging. It took me many, many years to actually understand why that was the case, and finally liberate myself from this idea that somehow the mere seeing of something is all it takes. The mere seeing of it, what it asks of us is that we honor that seeing and turn around and start walking back towards our heart. And that if we honor that seeing and keep it precious and recognize that we have had a deep insight into the truth, it will sustain you while you work through all of the stuff coming up in the nervous system, all of the old habits and patterns going back lifetimes, right? It's not little. This is not an insignificant thing. So with that in mind, I want you to bring that spirit, that kind of sentiment to our time together here during Satsang, so that you can use it as a way of reconciling. That's why I use the term reconciling your vision with the habit energy of your life, which thus frees up all that energy that's stuck in the habits and allows it to move into much more progressive, self-fulfilling self-expression, which is the real point of all of this. So, Robert, hi, GP, good Sunday to you from Southern Nevada. Hello, Robert. Rosario, hello from Spain. GP, I missed you last weekend. I'm glad you're here again. Yeah, I did too. I suddenly, like Friday, got ill, and so I just had to. I didn't want to take the chance that I'd oversleep on Sunday morning and the email would go out saying there's satsang when there wasn't. So I just decided I would call it, and it was the right thing to do. I really did need another day of rest. So yeah, it happens. You know, sometimes you just have to give the body what it needs. Ava says, "Oh, it was okay, no more problems." Nilu, hi from Amsterdam, first time here. Wonderful. Did I pronounce that right, Nilu? Got a question from Wooder Ousting. Hi, GP, all good? Can consciousness only know itself through the world? It's not like knowing like you're gaining knowledge, because consciousness is itself, and the knowing of itself is the being of the self. So the answer to that is no. It knows itself as itself and as itself alone. The world is, I like to think of it as God pondering her own nature. If you think about yourself, I mean, consider a dream at night. Right? The dream at night is completely constructed out of us. Every person in it, every event, every scene, every situation is all you. Yes, it may look like somebody you know in the waking state, but it's not them. It's an image in your mind of them, and therefore it is a mirror image of you. You're quite literally looking at yourself. Now, if you're conscious of that and you're aware of that, it becomes interesting, like a lucid dream. We like the lucid dreams because they give us the freedom. We can now play in this dream world and do what we like. But the the deeper significance of it is that in that consciousness, first off, the fear becomes eliminated because you know it's not you. You're not in any real danger. And secondly, you begin to see all sorts of different aspects of yourself. Well, that's what we call the world, the universe is. It is God pondering all these different aspects of herself. Just this constant unfoldment of the infinite nature of being made manifest in form. So the formless and the form become one. And that's the essence of the Heart Sutra. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. You cannot separate the two. So it's not that God needs the world, that consciousness needs the world to know itself, right? As if it could possibly be ignorant of itself. The world is consciousness pondering itself, its own infinite nature. And its infinite nature is so vast and so huge that it takes the shape of individual forms. So the universal, the infinite, the eternal is made manifest in a particular form. And I always like to use the example of music in a song. The infinitude of music is reflected in a single song or piece or improvisation, right? Is it the whole of music? No. Does music need that to know what it is? No. But it loves it because it's looking at itself. You're looking at yourself, just like a dream at night, only imagine it conscious, infinite, universal, and vast beyond imagination. And you'll have a picture of what that really means. So it doesn't need it to know itself like it's gaining knowledge about itself. True knowing and true being are one. You can put that to the test yourself. How do you know you are? If I say to you, you exist, there'll be a slight pause, and then you'll say, yes, I do. I do know that I exist. And I'll ask you, what did you refer to? Was it some knowledge? Was it some checklist? Was it some external authority? Was it some book you read? No, intuitively, you just went to this place. I am. I know that I am. I am, and I know that I am, right? But it's not an objective knowing, is it? It's not like you're standing here looking at that over and say, there it is. Mooji refers to that as non-phenomenal recognition. I am simply recognizing myself, right? As myself, the knowing and the being are one. Now, don't give this to the mind. It won't know what to do with it because the mind functions only in the realm of duality. It functions only in the realm of subject and object. But to consciousness, both subject and objects are objects of its perception. Everything in the universe can be known that way as subject to object. The only thing that can't be is the ultimate subject, which is consciousness. Consciousness knows itself as itself. And the knowing of itself and the being of itself are one. So it doesn't need a world to know itself, but the world is the natural explosion of creation that is God knowing herself, being and knowing as one. You could even think of it as the feminine and the masculine principle. That oneness is the explosion that is the creation of the universe. Does that nail it for you, Wouter, or do you want me to go a little bit further on that? Or is it Wouter? I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it. And let's see. Righty, what do we got here? Chris Skills. Hey, Chris. Hey, GP. Good to see you, man, having this problem. And it is the why question. It's to do with thoughts and its content. There are no real INO. I'm not, even though there's no real, even though it's a dream, but still ask why this? Why is it like this? I get the gist of the question. There isn't an answer for the why questions, but man, it's frustrating. Yes. Yes. um, once heard it described like this, which I found quite amusing. Somebody would say, well, why is it this way? And there's really two questions there, right? When you say, why is it this way? There's two questions there. The first one is why, which is what, that's kind of a driving force within your humanity, to know why, the cause, the connection between all things. But when we really look at it, deeply and honestly, we discover there are so many elements that come together in any given moment. And every single moment is like an infinite confluence of causes and effects that make this moment happen, which then becomes a part of the next moment. You realize that our linear way of thinking is completely infallible and really useless. The answer to that question is like, it can't be known. The second question is far more simpler. Is it like this? The answer is yes. It's the mind that gets frustrated with that, because the mind insists on having a causal connection, even though when you look at it, like I just did, finding the causal connection is absolutely impossible. As Nisargadatta said, everything causes everything. You cannot isolate one thing and say that's the cause of this thing. Because what's caused that? I mean, it's an infinite chain. And if you look at it from the point of view of the mind, you will see nothing but an infinite recursion, always folding back in on itself and never really getting anywhere. Why? Even when you look at the scientific model of the Big Bang, they have no idea why the Big Bang would happen. And in fact, it is impossible to, because prior to the Big Bang, there was no time. There were no objects. There were no forms. There was nothing but this teaspoon-sized ball of energy. And of course, these are all words we use now. There was nobody there to say it's a teaspoon-sized ball of energy. Teaspoon compared to what? Right? There wasn't a teaspoon there to put it on. So all of these things are really just conceptualizations, just extrapolated, right? Because we see some things over time, they seem to go in this direction. We try to model them going all the way back to the beginning, and it seems like at the beginning everything was coming together, but there's no way we can know why it exploded, or even when. If there was no time, there's no when it exploded. It means no timeless, I mean infinite time in front of it. So the whole thing becomes completely mysterious and perplexing, and that's the scientific miracle. I regard the idea about that and the certainty about that the same way I regard the idea of people believing in any kind of superstition. It's not science, it's faith, and it's okay. They started with their one miracle, and out of that they've built a very large structure that, within the context of what happened since, is consistent, but is completely incapable of identifying what happened before that, why any of this exists. When a scientist answers the question as to why it exists, he's describing a series of causes. But when you go back to the original, the answer is have no idea. If you have no idea about the original one, you have no idea about everything that came after that. And it's just this idea that, okay, for some reason, completely inexplicable, the big miracle occurred. This teaspoon-sized ball of energy exploded, went off in all directions, and it cooled. It cooled in just a certain rate, in just a certain way. And because of that, certain things happened that allowed these other things to happen, allowed other things to happen, on and on and on it goes, until we have this incredibly complex structure. Why I'm saying all this, and I'm bringing your attention to it, is to recognize the fact that you're asking a question that cannot be answered. Right? Why did this happen? It just happened. As Nisargadatta, again, the great master said, destiny is what happens. There is no why. Right? You know, if you're listening to a really great like jazz musician improvising, you could ask yourself, well, why did he put that note there? Well, there's nothing deliberate about it. He didn't put it there. He didn't plan it. It happened. And anybody who's ever had the experience of being in the flow or in the zone or having just one of those creative moments, you go, where did it come from? I have no idea. And that's the grand mystery we are all engaged in. And the grand mystery, I encourage all of you to simply embrace. Our modern world is so steeped in this idea that somehow reality is knowable and manipulatable and can be broken down into processes and stuff like that. And it's absurd when you think about it, that you cannot break the infinite down like that. The interdependency, the interreactions, the fact that everything arises simultaneously even puts a lie to the idea that there was a first cause. Right? I mean, something has to exist independently of everything else. Well, we call it God, which is as good a name as any. But they say, well, you know, on the first day God created the heaven and earth. Well, there was no first day, right? I mean, you can't say it's the first day because he created the sun and he created day and night. That's the first day. Well, what happened before that? What about the eternity? Because we're talking eternity, right? Right. We're not talking a starting point. It goes infinitely in both directions. So this moment when we say God created everything, how did we get to this moment? Through an infinite number of points of time, right? God dwells in the timeless. It doesn't, that approach of looking at it in terms of linear time and cause and effect simply doesn't hold water. I mean, it does a little bit. I mean, I you know, I do certain things well. If I exercise, I'm going to feel better. If I don't, I don't. Right? So there's minor, useful, you know, conventional things. But when you're putting that together and looking at it from the perspective of the of trying to answer the deeper existential questions, it's irrelevant. You could throw it out. It has absolutely no meaning. Does that help you, Chris? You know, it is a habit. It's an addiction we have. Right? We're obsessed with this idea that somehow we can figure it out. And it's really quite a primitive instinct, because if I know something, then I can feel safe. I can accommodate it. And if I don't know it, I don't like it. So, you know, the functioning of the human nervous system, especially what's called the storyteller mind, creates a narrative so that it feels comfortable. Fascinating thing about it, it creates a narrative and believes it, even though it's, you know, the flimsiest of evidence, because it would prefer to believe a lie than to not know anything. And of course, it doesn't know a lie. It's a lie. It believes it. Therefore, it becomes true. So hope that answers it for you, buddy. Malad Lali says, hey Malad, Dave and Eileen, hey GP, well, greetings from Southeast England. Good to be here. Good to have you. Anja says, hello from Germany. Good to be here too. And there's the link if you guys want to register. Ann Kaufman commented about the class, the webinar really that I did on Thursday. It was a great call, very deep. And yes, I am presenting this now. I'm not dumbing it down in the slightest. I'm really the existential approach to this that I've kind of mixed in with various kinds of personal development approaches and energy healing like that. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm getting too old to play around. I'm going directly to the essence of the whole thing. What is it that caused us to and our world to be in such turmoil? Well, the answer is very simple. We got disconnected from our soul. And that's what this is all about. And so I'm explaining inner reconciliation and where it came from within those terms. I've used all sorts of different models and stuff for presenting it, but this is the one I've got now, and we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Jaya Devin Palai. Hey, GP, have you heard of Russell Brand? I have. Very interesting character, funny guy, very smart. I watched a couple of his videos and he came across like he knew what he was talking about. Then I get a video recommendation about him flirting with women. There's lots of aspects to human beings. He's a relatively young man. Flirting is kind of our nature. We like it. We're flirting with the infinite all the time. We're flirting with love. He continues. Now, I don't know if the realization made him more confident or if this is his personal self taking over. You know, it's both, right? A personal realization is going to make you more strong, is going to make more powerful. But as Muji likes to point out, at every level at which we arrive, where there's a serious insight that begins to take root, a whole new set of ways in which we can go back to sleep are also introduced. So you can get stuck at any level. In Zen, they refer to Tozan's ranks. The, the, the great enlightenment, which most people feel is the end of the road in Tozan's ranks, in Zen, is actually step 3 of 5. It's only halfway there. And it is the place most likely for somebody to get stuck. It means being stuck in the absolute. You have to come down from that mountain, and if you don't do it willingly, you'll be kicked down it. So at every single point, until the point of complete Buddhahood, the opportunity to be kind of lulled back to sleep remains. So I can't say I don't know him personally. I like him. I like what he has to say. I think he's a clear thinker, and he's clearly had experience that is genuine and authentic. The question is, how well has it been integrated? And that's the question I take up all the time. Next year, I will be doing my class From Delusion to Awakening again, which deals with that in great detail. But to suffice it to say, the integration of this into our life takes patience and time, and it's not as straightforward here in the West as it is in the East. Very, very different traditions. They don't have the same kind of emphasis on individuality that we do. They don't have the same kind of social and cultural freedoms that we do. And I'm not talking about political freedom and all that nonsense, all that political talk that people like to indulge in. I'm talking about, we do have in the West a culture that honors individuality, it honors individual place and purpose, it honors individual relationships, love and romance and all of that kind of stuff, which is not as a big deal in other cultures. So the intersecting of a deep non-dual spiritual truth like that into this culture makes it take a completely different form, and it's one that there really aren't any great models to go by. We can look at the traditional ones, Buddhism and Hinduism and Advaita Vedanta, the ashram culture and the monastery culture and things like, even in Christianity, the monastery cultures. We can look at those to see what we can grasp, but we can also see that a lot of that was simply cutting yourself off from that kind of personal and sensual interest. But it was also at a time when there wasn't, when you didn't have that much available anyway. Now we do. There aren't any restrictions anymore. So we're kind of walking a very significant path. We're also witnessing a complete breakdown of the structural control over the relationship between the genders, love and family, and all of it. It's a complete breakdown. So we have, on one hand, we have the fundamentalists trying to go back to that old time religion, right? Which is really just, Yahweh, right? It's the Bronze Age God enforcing rules. And then we have the other side, which is just completely, abandoned any kind of any kind of accountability, and is just kind of lost in the sensual pleasure. And somehow we've got to find the yin yang of this, so that we find a new way that is both honoring to the individuals and not destructive to the cultures, that honors all of the freedoms that we all want to have. So, it's a complex question. It's a very complex question. I think in the bottom line is, with someone like him or some other teachers, um, take what they say, take it into your own heart if it has a sense of truth to it. And if there is a sense of truth to it, that truth will be there, even if the mouthpiece through which it came, is not even up to the level of 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 of, um, of expression, and the level of the depth of content that they may have been the vehicle to come across. So make sure that that you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, so that you can be clear. If it has a resonance with you, forget where it came from, because eventually you have to anyway. It'll become your own, and then you'll be able to maybe even take it farther than he could, right? Maybe even at some point you'll meet him and you'll help him. It's this is really how it works. I've really let go of all the judgments of these kinds of things, my expectations of what you know gurus and teachers are supposed to be like, and I just focus my attention on my sense of what is the best way to live. What does a life of value actually look like, based on transcendent values, but not ignoring human need. That's just kind of the place I've come to, and I don't. So far, nothing has convinced me that there's a better way of going about it. So, Jaya Devan, how is that? Does that help you? Infinity Coaching. I do. Oops, just lost it. Okay, there you are. Hi, G. Sabin Paris here. Good to see you again. Good to see you too. I love Paris. What a great city. Wow. Pioneer Polly. Very good stuff. Thank you. It's a new name. Are you new? I've not seen that name before. Again, Jaya Devin. Then there are people like Ramana Maharshi, Papaji, Swama, Vishamayanda, etc., how they live their lives. Yeah, right. I think I probably covered it in what I just said. There's all sorts of examples. Now, you have to remember that all three of those people that you mentioned are in the Indian tradition, which never had the same level of emphasis on the individual. You are always a part of your group, your caste, your tribe, right? You're defined by that. China's like that. Japan's like that. The East is like that, that your role is who you are. The idea of individuality is a Western thing that has developed. Now we've gone overboard with it. We've gone crazy about it, to the point where it's bordering on narcissism, right? So now it's all about me and getting my needs, and it's all about me and my dreams and all this stuff. So we've got, the pendulum has to come back, but it's got to go out there. So we realize that, there is more. There is an individual essence here, and I do go over that in detail in that webinar. That you cannot. They're both essential, and it's our job to reconcile what appear to be very, very opposite points of view. The needs of the group, the culture, the community, the tribe, as opposed to the needs of the individual. And a lot of them, they just deny the needs of the individual. So you have arranged marriages, and your life is planned. You're going to just work in the same business your father worked in, on and on and on it goes. And there's an acceptance of that because there's no other alternative ever presented. And that's why sages look so odd to them, because they weren't bound by any of those rules. So they have a very different model than we do, which puts us in a beautiful creative tension, right? Where we are really quite needing to to see through this stuff for ourselves and for all of the advancement of humanity, because this is part of the picture. The, the honoring of the individual and its roots in the universal. That to me is the biggest vision. So thank you, Jaya Devin. Dave Scott, hi Jeep, from Dave in Philly. Hi Dave. H. Beck, hi lovely people from Hendrick, south of Germany. Oh, wonderful. Jags, GP, hey, I've listened to many teachers and I feel you're up there with the best of them in terms of sincerity, kindness, and compassion. Oh, thank you so much for speaking from your truth. Well, thank you. It wasn't always so. It's been cultivated over many years, and life has smacked me up the head enough times to realize it's not worth it. It's not worth getting a big head about. And the only thing that matters is compassion. It's all about love. It's all we've ever wanted. And the only reason people become hateful and bitter and angry and all of the stuff that goes along with it is because they feel cut off from love. That's all there is to it. So what's the cure? Well, love them. Love the hell out of them. Sophie. Hi, Sophie. Lovely woman. Dear BGP, I have come back from a Kali temple in Wales. Beautiful. Since have written off car. Since have safely written off car. I often feel I'm being punished. I know there's a purification after Darshan, you mean, I think? Sorry, Darshan. But please help to explain when things appear to go wrong and the need for forgiveness when doing something wrong, to accept with maturity that things just happen to you. Beautiful, beautiful question. Yes, happen to me all the time. Because, when you open a new space within you, it's a new territory. You've literally created a new environment within yourself. Now, remember, the internal workings of our nervous system and energy system and are purely reactive, right? And they're designed in such a way to become automatic. So you live in an environment long enough, your nervous system gets the lay of the land. It knows what this environment is. At first, it's afraid, right? And it will try to get out of the environment. But if it stays, then it'll eventually adapt to the environment. That's what happens. But when you interject something new into that environment or shift it in some way, there's a reaction, there's a resistance, there's a pushback, right? And it's absolutely natural. And for most people, they get really stunned by that and they think they must have done something wrong. No, not at all. I mean, the gift of consciousness is that you can consciously now introduce significant, very significant changes in the internal environment without the external environment changing at all. Now, your nervous system evolved over millions of years to be constantly adapting to an external environment over which it had no control. Now, consciousness emerges, and suddenly I'm creating inner environments. Well, the nervous system is reacting to it as if it was an external environment over which it had no control. And therefore, it is resisting you in the same way it would resist some interloper into its tribal space. And that's all that's happening. So forgiveness is nothing more than the recognition that that's happened and that there's nobody responsible. So forgive them, Father. They don't know what they're doing. So you can just look at that. It doesn't know what it's doing. It's simply reactive. It's a robot. It's a machine. It's an organic machine. It's a beautiful machine, but it's a machine. It's purely reactive. When you see that, you see there's nobody there to condemn. And that's the blossoming of forgiveness. My God, it's innocent. It's simply following its own nature. Now, I can step into the role of the conscious center of this and guide it into channels that are freer, more expansive, more loving, more compassionate, less resistant, less entrenched, less afraid. but I can only do that when I understand the nature of what I'm dealing with. When I understand an animal, I can work with it. I can work with its own nature and therefore train it. I can make it behave in ways that are acceptable and useful to me. That's all we're doing. We're retraining this animal, the human animal, and the higher part of us, which is beyond the instinctual, is taking on the job of training. The problem is that we're still so identified with this human animal that it does something, we think, I've done it, right? I've reacted, I've backslid, I've made things go wrong, I'm guilty. And therein lies the problem. And of course, that's what we're doing here. We are separating consciousness from the environment in which it is interacting. Whereas when we're growing up, when we're learning, when we're being conditioned, it's exactly the opposite. We believe we are this. I am my body. I am this conditioning. I am these reactions. I am all the characteristics of the body, and it's perfectly natural. The moment a sense of separation emerges, and it happens early on us, the nervous system goes from being completely unidentified with anything, it's just the undifferentiated consciousness, but suddenly it experiences trauma, experiences things happening, difficulties, and suddenly it has to define itself in terms that are separate from its environment, and it immediately just grabs onto the body. And so now all of the conditioned patterns, the reactions, the animal instincts, right, become me, right, when in fact they're not. You are that which is aware of them. You are the consciousness. But that's where we're getting to. Right? Does that help you, Sophie? Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Jags, on a quantum level, electrons behave differently when measured by an observer, which has baffled many physicists to the point where they pretty much ignore that phenomenon. I wonder if you think you have a theory. You might have a theory regarding consciousness, GP. Thank you. Well, Jags, I regard consciousness as the essential. I regard it as the fundamental substance. I regard it as the actual field from which everything emerges. Whereas physicists regard consciousness as a function of these electrons and particles and stuff. And things like noticing that what we call matter will show up as a wave or as a particle in various kinds of patterns, depending on the expectation of the observer. Now, it was recognized by the quantum dudes that objective knowledge was really impossible, that nothing comes into being until it is observed. And that goes, I mean, Shrishti, Vatu, is that it? No, Drishti, Shrishti, Vatu. Nothing exists until perceived. That's thousands of years old, that statement in Hinduism. I think it goes all the way back to the Vedas. That's a mysterious, transcendent, mystic knowledge, right? That was right in the face of the quantum fellows who'd already gotten so used to this world being so strange down there that nothing surprised them anymore. And I said, yes, of course, it's an interaction. And if we look at it really on a practical level, our eyes see, a tiny fraction of the full range of light. As a matter of fact, I read a while ago that if you read some of the ancient writings, the Iliad, the Bible, and the like, they don't mention the color blue. When they describe the sky and the water and stuff, the oceans and stuff, they don't use the word blue. They have other ways of doing it. And it's been determined by studying the eye and the like, that our capacity to see blue is relatively recent, like last couple thousand years. Right. So we had blue did not exist, right, as far as we were concerned. Right. That frequency did, but we didn't see it. Right. But then we developed this capacity to be able to see, and suddenly we're seeing blue. right? We say, oh, it's been there the whole time. Blue. It was not blue. It became blue when we saw it. Other than that, it was just the unseen realm of the everything. Now, when you consider that what we see is just a tiny fraction of what's there, and what we've even begin to discern with our instrumental uh, uh, extensions and our mathematical theories is still only a part of of all that is. Um, so when we really look at it in a very practical way, we see that nothing exists until I perceive it. It simply doesn't exist. Now, we imagine that it does, because once I've perceived it, I project upon it continuity, longevity, uh, objectivity, an inherent being. In other words, this is what Buddha meant when he said projecting a self on it. It's a self. It's something that I am perceiving, and the qualities that it possesses exist completely separately from my perceiving of them. I'm stepping into that realm, and I am perceiving something that pre-existed. Well, these guys are saying, no, it's not the case. Drishti Shrishti Avada says, nope, not the case. It's not so. That the thing comes into existence with our perception of it. And that's a mind blower, which means whatever I think it is, it is. Now you water that down in a very remedial way, and you've got things like the law of attraction and watching your thoughts and emotions and all of that. But that's really a very naive assumption about it as well. I'm the co-creator of the universe, but hold on a second, who created you, right? If you yourself are part of the creative process, well, where did this all start? So now we got to step out of us, even as a co-creator, and start moving deeper and deeper into this realm of pure mystery. Yes, it's here. There's no doubt about it. We're witnessing each other. You're experiencing me as a form, right? But what you are experiencing is at best a combination of you and me, right? It's not just me and you're perceiving me. You're perceiving you as me. I know it's a mind blower, isn't it? it's a total mind killer, really, because it's totally bewildering. Well, then where do all these things actually come from? Now, that's really the heart and soul of what Buddha, what is embodied in the Lankavatara Sutra, where Buddha was talking about that. It's all a projection of the mind. It's all a projection of the mind, all of it, not just some of it, all of it. It's all a perception. And nothing has any kind of inherent meaning out there, or existence, or self, or attributes, that it is all a result of the perception. Well, then what is the thing? It's not that I perceive something as existence. It didn't have existence till I perceived it. Well, then the it I'm perceiving didn't come from out there. It came from in here. My goodness, where did that come from? Where does form arise from? And this is the great mystery to ponder. There's something inherent about it. So it both exists and does not exist simultaneously. And that's the only way we can truly think about ourselves in consciousness. It exists, but not as a thing. So as a thing, it doesn't exist. Existence takes on a completely different meaning. You know your existence because you exist, not because you've been able to perceive yourself, because you can't perceive yourself, right? You've never seen yourself. You've seen images, you've seen pictures, you've seen videos, you've seen on YouTube or something, right? But you've never actually seen yourself. And so the image you hold of yourself is hearsay. It's one that's been given to you. That was the great insights for Douglas Harding, where he created the headless way, where he realized, I don't have a head. From my perspective, I don't have a head. I don't have two eyes. I've got this one open thing floating through the universe. I've got hands that come out, I see them, and then they disappear. Right? But if you really look at your experience and take away from it all of the basic assumptions about it that we think are true and we've lived by and we just have never questioned, you realize that the actual experience you're having right now is incredibly mysterious. It's like, what? Take away all the context and explanations and just look at what you are actually experiencing, and it is mind-blowing. So thank you, Jags. That's just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. David and Elaine. Hello, my lovely friends. Where did we go? Up. Hold on. Let's go scrolling by. After an awakening, can the trauma you mentioned in inner reconciliation after separation occurs manifest as illness, sometimes chronic, which was not present before the awakening? And any advice on dealing with it? Many thanks. Great webinar on Thursday. Thank you guys. Glad you guys were there. Yes, of course. When I'm referring to the awakening, I am not referring to Buddhahood. I'm not referring to the ultimate transformation. I'm referring to the awakening of consciousness within the realm of form. The awakening of the formless within the realm of form. The awakening of the timeless within the field of time. And I thank Zen for opening my eyes to this. And it was really kind of brought the final curtain down, is that it is neither of those are the absolute. The absolute is the transcendent middle, which is both and neither. It's neither this nor that, nor both, nor neither. When that happens, there is a completely new relationship with experience emerges. And yes, with that shift in perception, what happens? Internally, there's a completely different shift within the inner environment, right? The shift in the inner environment means that the energy of the nervous system, which has been contained in a certain form, the walls of the container have been removed. Maybe not completely, maybe just expanded, but they've certainly shifted. They have shifted form. And what's going to happen? Well, the energy within that is going to now conform to the new environment. If that environment is more safe, and which awakening brings a greater sense of safety, inevitably things that were being held in check because they were dangerous, right? Because they caused the trauma, can begin to seep out. They can begin to be released. And when that energy is released, it can affect all sorts of things. It can affect thoughts. It can affect emotions. It can affect sensations. It can affect various kinds of body parts. Very common, as a matter of fact. It can also affect circumstances that appear to be external. Because we think of our body as this localized thing, but in fact, it is a flow of energy that's constantly interacting with the environment and is constantly in contact with the environment. The body does not have a sense of being separate from things around it. Our mind does. That's all projected on top of it. That's all an illusion that has been believed and therefore projected upon experience, that thinks that the realm of influence ends with my skin. It does not. And so anything can happen, and it usually does. Like I think Sophie had mentioned that something happened to her car on the way back from having darshan with Master, right? Yeah, it can affect the car, because the car is just another part of consciousness. It's part of your consciousness, therefore it is made of consciousness, and it is as much an expression of you as the color of your eyes. So yeah, how do you deal with it? Well, by understanding it, by being clear about it, right? And then being with all of the things that come up, right? So instead of like initially, something comes up, a pain in the body, or maybe even a chronic pain that wasn't there before, something emerges. There's a sense, got to get rid of it. Well, there's a lot of things that happen. I got to get rid of it. So there's a resistance to having it. Then the mind makes up a story. Oh, see, you didn't really get it. You really didn't understand that. If you had, this wouldn't have happened. Well, I mean, it's ridiculous to even think that. This should be happening. How do I know? Because it's happening. Right? There it is. So even saying it shouldn't is a waste of time, because there it is. So, okay, this is what is here now. And awakening, sinking into the nervous system, beginning to colonize the entire system is, is exactly that. It is this environment in of total equanimity and acceptance, which means that all the stuff that comes up, all the things you experience, there's no judgment in it, there's no condemnation, there's no agenda, there's no attempt to fix it or change it or get rid of it. It becomes a very humbling way of just letting the karma fulfill itself. And you're just letting it happen. You're the perfect space in which it can happen. So all of that energy can basically run out of steam and dissolve because it's not getting any fresh energy, and for any fresh energy to it. It's not being fed. So you are now just being with it. There's the great quote from Nisargadatta after his enlightenment. I allowed my human life to fulfill its destiny. I remain as I am. Clearly, there's me, pure consciousness. I'm the absolute. This is going on. It's part of the absolute. It's not a problem. Without identification, it is just a happening. It doesn't mean anything. It's not a chronic pain. I mean, chronic pain is an idea in the mind. In this moment, is there a pain present? That's it. Be with that pain. Give your attention to that pain. Be loving towards that pain. Be absolutely equanimous with what's happening in this moment, and you become the peacemaker. And blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. So it's always about allowing, starting with just allowing. That's why when I was teaching that on Thursday, that's where it started. It's the doorway of meditation, of self-acceptance, of self-love, of unconditional love. Not love that says, I want it to be different, but love that says, this is what it is. And what can I do but actually completely and totally accept what is? Right? I mean, we want to accept what is when it meets our criteria. And of course, I'm awake now, and it's wonderful, and I'm on the road to Buddhahood, right? But when it comes in pain and anguish, or some kind of outbreak, or some kind of thing pops up, or some kind of nastiness comes out sideways, we want to fall back into the pattern of beating ourselves up and suppressing, right? A lot of religion is mostly suppression. Suppress your natural instincts. A lot of spirituality, which is supposed to be liberated from that, does the same thing. Well, now I'm supposed to be spiritual, so something like that comes up. Oh, that shouldn't be happening. Oh, what do I do? Meditate more, chant more. No, you let it come up, right? If it came up, it needed to, and if you have no issue with it, there's no suffering, right? So is that answered for you guys? Wooter says, how old are you, G? I am 67. Are you really feeling that you are eternal being consciousness? Yeah, most of the time. I mean, yes, I find myself falling into patterns of thought, but even as I fall in the pattern of thought, I realize that I am what is aware of this pattern of thought arising. And there was a time when I was really upset when I'd fallen into patterns of thought. Now I don't care. It doesn't matter, it is, the patterns of thought arise. And I realized that the one who falls into the pattern of thought is part of the pattern of thought. And I'm just sitting here watching the entire thing. And I know over time, it may take a longer time or a shorter time. Some people get that very quickly. It hasn't been my case. That eventually all of that disappears. You just become more and more yourself. And that's really all this is about, right? More and more yourself. And as that expands, I just find myself becoming more happy, more loving, more patient. It's very hard to trigger me anymore. Things just don't bug me, right? nothing really bothers me. And that to me is the sign of it. It's not like some great revelation or walking on water. It's just, are you content? You know, are you compassionate? Are you, does your presence uplift? Do you have an agenda? Right? Are you available? Are you engaged? Can you be intimate? Can you be honest? Those are the things. Those are the measurements I go by. Not how well somebody puts together an inquiry, or how long they can meditate for, and things like that. And that to me is, my whole life is governed by the insight that I am eternal being in consciousness. And my mind creates doubts, and then I recognize that it's the eternal being consciousness that is witnessing the arising of doubts and the image of a doubter. And I don't have any argument with that. This will go on as long as it does. It's grace. Grace brought me to this point, and I have to bring me this the way, the rest of the way there. And I realize now that the awakening and the ultimate moving into Buddhahood does not depend on what the circumstances that happen and the various kinds of reactions. It only depends on staying in love with who you are. So, does that help you, Wooter? Hello all, Ursula from Madeira Island, Portugal here. Hi, Ursula. Robert Hill. Hi, what's up with all these identity politics and multiple gender stuff? Are people so unhappy? People getting easily offended, the need to identify with something? Yes. Yes, because as consciousness expands, the identifications fall apart. And remember, our identification was a defensive posture. We took this in order to feel safe, which means that as identity falls apart and consciousness expands, and it's happening, right? It's happening universally. Everybody is feeling it. As that happens, we feel less safe. When we feel less safe, we start making rules. That's what happens. We start making rules to try to control things to feel more safe again. Unscrupulous people, greedy people, jump on that to try to exploit it for control. That's where tyrants come from. And so, we get confused about our gender, and I don't care. I really don't care. If somebody, if a man identifies himself as a woman and wants to act that part, fine. It has absolutely no effect whatsoever on somebody's awakening. It's the opposite true. So a woman who identifies herself with a man, fine. It means nothing. It's just, we all have experiences that we have to go through. And so identity politics is a way of is a way of shrinking the conversation. It's not really about being offended. They make that stuff up. It's a way about controlling perception. It's a way about controlling the conversation and being able to shut down somebody without actually hearing what they have to say, because they use certain words that are triggering. Most of the people I really know who could be offended by various kinds of words aren't. They're just so beyond that. It's just like, who cares? I mean, I know plenty of people of all kinds of, race and religion and gender and sexuality and all of that. And I go, who cares? Right? It's a way of us trying to control each other. And it comes from the fact that our sense of identity and everything we've relied upon to give us a sense of identity has collapsed. I mean, it's already collapsed. It's been to collapse for decades, right? It's just culture is reeling from this, trying to hold on as tightly as it can to models that are outdated. I mean, when you think of somebody going back and, wanting to go to some Bronze Age patriarchal warrior god, right, who's jealous and wrathful, as to provide us a structure in which we can live in our modern world, you have to see that it's insane. It's absolutely insane. And somebody making the comment, I can't remember who it was. I think it was Kurt Vonnegut, who said all this talk about, all these Christians and the 10 Commandments, and they're, weeping because they want to have the 10 Commandments in public halls and stuff like that. He's saying, well, that's the Mosaic law. That's not the Christian law. He said, how about having the Beatitudes in there? But just how about having blessed are the peacemakers on a big sign in the Pentagon? Right? Yeah. I mean, that's, if we really embraced ideas that are expansive, and that we can build cultural relationships and cultural norms, so we can all work together, build cultural conventions that are useful. But we need a whole set of myths. I heard Joseph Campbell, Bill Moyer asked him the question. He said, what happens when a culture loses its myths and doesn't create new ones? He says, well, this is what we have. Right? We have not created a view, a unifying, satisfying view of the universe and our role in it to create a stable culture, which is why it's falling apart, and why certain factions, whether it be Sharia law or the law of Deuteronomy or that, are trying to force a position that is simply not workable anymore. It is simply not true, and assert it as if it was a scientific fact, right? The intelligent creation crew, they just kind of missed the whole point of it. So I hope that answers your question about it. What we're seeing all around the world is the incredibly individually and global discontent, dissatisfaction, and anxiety that innately arises when we have lost touch with our center and have not yet found a new one. And we're at a time now with mass media and stuff, there's so many points of view arguing for it. And there's so many people profiting handsomely from being in this unstable position, selling us not real substantive solutions for humanity, but simply selling us crap we don't need so they can exploit us for money. That's the world we're in, and that's what happens when we lose our way. The dominant value system of the world now is selfishness and greed. That's it. It's every man for himself. I'm going to take care of me. And that gets collected in an entire group of people, the uber wealthy. And the uber wealthy are not in the same culture as we are. They're like a different country. And that's the confusing. If we knew that, we could deal with it. So the cultural and class warfare we're experiencing right now is just like the war between two completely competing countries. There's no real difference, except it's not localized. It's spread apart. It's such a division in perception of things. And as of yet, no concrete unifying factor has emerged. And I think it's going to stay that way. I think it needs to stay that way. I think we're going to live in this chaos for a bit, because eventually we're going to run out of moves. And when we do, consciousness is just going to explode. That's what I see happening, although it's going to get dark before that happens. Anja, I also love the webinar on Thursday. The yoga of belonging exercise was wonderful. Thank you so much for all you do. Oh, thank you. If it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be able to do it. There'd be nobody to talk to. I just go make, espressos at Starbucks or something just to make myself useful. Ducks, hey GP, when you're dissociated with the body in the sense that you are more than that, it's not a dissociation. It's an establishment of a different relationship. What is your relationship with the body post disassociation? Is it one of the weird distances from it, or integration? Integration, for sure. And I only object to the word disassociation because your use of it is actually accurate. I prefer the word disidentification because disassociation does have a psychological meaning to it, and it's not a good one. You know, I mean, that's what happens. I actually remember, I remember when I was young, because, you know, a lot of my earliest trauma was being tied. I was tied into bed. Um, uh, and so I remember as a little kid, and this went on from about the time I was about 2 to the time I was like 5, maybe 6, like 3, 4 years. This was like a regular practice, trying to break my spirit, basically. It influenced it for sure. Can find it, but it didn't break it. Can't actually break somebody's spirit. Anyway, what happened was a disassociation, and it voiced itself because I remember being there trying to untie the knot. They had my leg tied to the side of the bed, and I remember trying to untie it. And I remember once begging to my mother, "Don't tie the boy, don't tie the boy," and she was laughing about it. She thought it was funny, but I had disassociated. It wasn't "don't tie me," it was "don't tie the boy." And I actually remember a moment when I found myself actually standing outside watching myself untie. That's dissociation. And that's part of the trauma, right? That's the trauma where you disconnect from the enormous amount of pain that you're experiencing, um, in order to keep yourself safe, in order to protect yourself from the experience, which is so overwhelming that if you do not isolate it, if you do not separate yourself from it, you will die or go crazy. I didn't die. I did go a little crazy, but I didn't die. Um, so um, so you are more than the body. You are the perceiver of the body, right? And the body, you can verify this for yourself. You can look at your life and realize that there is something throughout your entire life that has not changed, which is why we can't detect it. You know, we can't say it was like that and now it's that. It's because it's always been the same. It's impossible to try to even conceive it or identify it or qualify it or give it some characteristics or attributes. And yet you're aware that this changeless whatever has witnessed all this changing, coming and going. And then you see that your body has did nothing but change constantly, is changing constantly. It never stops, right? So post disidentification or disassociation in your terms, um, it is you recognize that you're not that, right? And therefore you stop thinking of yourself in those terms. You stop reacting like that. In that process, the nervous system itself begins to open up, and the reactive patterns begin to drop away because they're not being sustained. And as that goes on, what happens is the most beautiful integration takes place. The body doesn't become this thing to get rid of. It becomes this incredible instrument of self-expression. So you simply move from the defensive posture into the expressive posture, and you find that the same mechanism that has been, you know, doing all this stuff, wrapping itself into a pretzel to keep you safe, now becomes this beautiful vehicle for expressing the most subtle, beautiful nuances. It becomes self-expressive. It becomes what it was really intended to be, the personal, the the infinite, formless timelessness made manifest in the field of time. And now you see that the two of them are not two. They are really one. That you cannot have one without the other. That the true transcendence is beyond time and timeless. It is just unspeakable. The Tao is unspeakable. Excuse me 1 minute. I gotta get some more water. I'll be right back. All right. Sorry. Thank you for staying with me. I needed that. All right. So does that do it for you, my friend Ducks? You good? Arby says, I don't feel like I'm ready for that experience. I freak out at the slightest sensations. And it's ruining my experience. Oh, I get anxious when I try to meditate. I'm afraid that I'll be taken out of body or start seeing or hearing things. And I don't feel I'm ready for that experience. That's none of that. Meditation has nothing to do with any of that. Matter of fact, if you had that experience, I would say, turn your attention away from it, because that's not what meditation is for. It's not going to give you experiences. It is to connect you with that which is having all the experiences, to see experiences being passing. It means nothing. Even if you did have the great out-of-body experience, it's just an experience. It has no inherent meaning, right? We make a story about it. We think it's a great thing, and maybe it's a great experience, but it doesn't mean anything. It has no real statement about who you are. It's not an existential statement about the nature of your being. It's on a practical level, if that's the case, what I would recommend, because to silently ponder yourself is absolutely necessary, but do it the way I do it, like in allowing, where it has no objective. I'm not trying to get anywhere. I even like use that a lot more often than I use the word meditation, because meditation these days has this overhead about it. It's got this thing about what it is and how it's supposed to be and all of that, these wonderful things. And so people get these expectations, or they hear about, people seeing lights and colors and other dimensions and leaving their body and all of that. And it's, no, just leave it out of the thing. Just allow. Can you just let yourself feel what you're feeling in the moment? That's it. And actually, when you start to meditate and a fear like that comes up, it's really just a resistance to the meditation. Say, well, what's going to happen if that? And that's just your mind. It says, I don't want to do this. That's all it is. Right? It's inspiring you to be afraid of something that might happen. Well, what's happening in this moment? Just focus your attention right there, just on the fear that something might happen, right? And just be with that fear. Well, where's that coming from, right? Nothing is happening right now. So it's the mind jumping in the future as to what might happen based on some ideas that it has, right? So are you freaking out over the sensation you're having right now, listening to me? Is it ruining your experience? Because right now, as you're listening to me, you're going to feel things. You're going to have some aha moments. You're going to have some moments. You're going to have all sorts of kinds of different experiences. You don't have any problem being with those sensations, right? But for some reason, when you suddenly turn inside in a meditative sense, then those sensations, all of a sudden, they become very important. They're not. They just happen to be what's there in the moment. And then the mind says, I'm afraid I'm going to take out of the body and start seeing things, right? I don't think I'm ready for that. I freak out at the slightest sensations. Who's speaking? Is that you, really? Or is that your mind simply not wanting to turn within? So just be gentle with yourself, right? If that starts happening, don't run away. See if you can just be with that feeling of fear. Say, well, where does it lead to? And let's say it does. Let's say you are out of the body. What's it going to do to you? Can it kill you? No. Can it change you? No. If you're not there first, the consciousness that's aware of it, can it even arise? No. So anything arising, whether it be the most mundane thing in the world, right? Like, taking a drink of water, or something really esoteric like colored lights and angels singing and the like, is exactly the same substance. We make one esoteric and extraordinary, and the other we make mundane and everyday, right? And so we say, I'm afraid of this, and I'm not afraid of that. What's just what you're used to. I find the vast majority of the time when people really learn how to meditate, they don't have those kinds of experiences. Sometimes great insight will come, but they don't have that kind of experience. So just allow yourself to be with it. If you know EFT, use it. Start tapping on yourself while you're having that experience, which helps calm the nervous system. That's what it does. So you can just kind of calm the reactiveness, which will help you just become more present with it, because you don't want to be running away from your own feelings and thoughts, right? You don't want to be a slave to your own feelings and thought. I've got to get away from this thought, right? Well, wait, it's just your thought. It's just this thing in your head, right? You can't really get away from it. We can suppress it. And of course, that suppression is the cause of all our suffering. It is what has disconnected us from the innate and natural sense of our true being. And the innate natural sense of our true being is known better as happiness. So, does that help, RB? Thank you. Jada Devon says, oops, that was an accident, when he retracted that thing. Okay, you're forgiven. Sophie, thank you. Does consciousness test itself by creating challenges to overcome with awareness? Listening to you is such a relief. Thank you. No, it doesn't create challenges. The challenges arise only to the false sense of ourselves, and they're only there by consciousness in order to reveal the falsity of what we think we are. So it's not a challenge in the sense that consciousness isn't challenging itself. It knows itself. But in the unfoldment of consciousness emerging as the total reality is kind of sweeping away everything that is unlike itself. And the way it does that is through self-realization, right? The experience of waking up. Now, consciousness doesn't need to wake up, right? The reality is you don't need to wake up. So what's actually waking up? Well, what's waking up is awakening itself. And it's witnessing that. It is witnessing the experience of awakening, which itself is part of this dream that we're dreaming. Nobody's asleep. Nobody has to awake. Nobody needs to be saved. The Bodhisattva vow, suffering beings are numberless. I vow to save them all. And when all beings have been saved, no being has been saved. That's the awakening. It's the only way you can put it, right? You wake up from a dream and you realize nobody in the dream needs to be saved. You don't go running back in with fire trucks and stuff, right? Oh, they were never real in the first place. You were never asleep in the first place. Ramana Maharshi said, the biggest obstacle to enlightenment is thinking that you're not. It's just a thought. But that thought held is like, you can block out the entire sun with your thumb, right? That thought creates the whole seeker. There's nothing to seek, and there's no one to seek it. You are the self. That's a fact. Right? Simply accepting that seems to be difficult for most people because we're looking for some kind of evidence of it. But as long as we're looking for evidence, we're going to find more evidence of the same. You are consciousness. Simple as that. You are the self. So you hold all the cards. You are the truth. Are you the mistake? Are you the illusion? Illusions have no sense of presence. They have no sense of self. They have no sentience, right? So you can't be the illusion. So the one suffering from the illusion is the illusion. The dream is the dreamer. The belief is the believer. And you are the witness of all of it. Be the pure witness. That's all I ask. Just go there and stay there. You are the self. Right, I'm the self. Oh yeah, that's right. Robert, IGP, with consciousness, I can go there, but feel a resistance hold me back. Thank you. Thoughts? Thank you. Well, you don't go there, you are that, right? And so there's a sense of being separate from it and returning to it. That's okay. But the sense of being separate and returning, which is a beautiful experience, actually, is being witnessed by that which you're reconnecting to, right? So you've never actually left that point. Now, when this dawning on you will create resistance, it's not holding you back. It is simply the experience. Look, who is it holding back? The only thing it can hold back is the image you're holding of yourself. It can't hold consciousness back. No form can hold back the infinite, can it? Could some object hold back infinite space? Is space disturbed by the objects in it? If I run my hand through here, is the space I've run my hand through all upset? Does it leave a trace? Identify with that which is containing everything and not with any of the content. So nothing is holding you back. You are witnessing resistance in the nervous system, nothing more. The mind will say, that resistance is holding me back. But notice resistance is just a feeling. It's just a sensation that has arisen. And with it, the story that this resistance has power and authority and it's holding me back and it's interfering with my awakening. The awakening is what's witnessing it. Consciousness is witnessing. If there's no consciousness there, it couldn't be witnessed. So just let yourself return to the position you've never really left, right? Which is that which is aware of what is happening. It is aware of all of the various nuances and stuff that's going on, and it's aware of that sense of a separate self, which is someone who is seeking, someone who's disconnected, someone who's in resistance, someone who's not getting it, someone who has to get back to it, someone who's got to seek. All of that. All of the experiences and the one experiencing it are all being witnessed from this place. Are they not? Look for yourself. Are they not being seen? Have you ever not been that seer? Hasn't everything that's ever happened all appeared in front of that same lens, including the thought that you're on the other side of the lens? Just can't take it any, I can't take it any deeper. You are already looking from there, right? I mean, you're witnessing a separate self diligently searching for pure awareness, and the entire thing is being witnessed by pure awareness. If it wasn't, it couldn't appear. And are you not conscious of it? Well, then you're the consciousness. Simple as that. Thanks, Robert. David and Elaine, many thanks, GP, for the wealth and richness of your explanations. You're very, very welcome. Very, very welcome. To our question, yeah, very welcome. Waltz. But incorporating all of this in everyday life, what confuses me, for X, you're walking in the park at night and some thug blocks you and wants to have their way with you, and you don't have the strength to stop them, and they're not the reasoning type what to do at that moment like this. These are the types of moments which makes me wonder whether all this self-inquiry is just an escape from reality. Well, no, what self-inquiry does is free you from any ideas about what you think should be happening. It frees you from a sense of identity that is very contained and narrow and limited, and puts you into a place where you have access to the infinite resources of being, which means in that moment, you will have whatever it is you need to be fully present with that, right? Doesn't mean it's not going to happen, because you've gone beyond, now it's not going to happen. But it does mean that when it does happen, you know that you have the resources to deal with it. And those resources could be, they could be just saying the right thing, which shocks them. It could be you just open up your wallet and handing the money and walking or running away. It could be suddenly something inside of you comes up with the strength to deck the guy, right? You don't know what's going to happen. And if you think one of those is the right way and the other is the wrong way, well, you've just constrained yourself. You're going to do that which is completely consistent with your nature and the nature of being when you are no longer confined by the limited sense of identity. So self-inquiry is not an escape from reality. It is an immersion in reality, and it is a peeling away of all of the unrealities that we have believed that have restricted our inner resources. So now you don't show up as a victim. Even if somebody's got a gun, in your heart, you're not a victim. This is simply an experience that's happening. Matter of fact, the enormous amount of compassion for the fellow that would actually drive them, contrary to our human nature, which is loving and compassionate, to become that. You can just see the whole history of things that happened to them that put them in that position. That's the way their nervous system reacted. It's amazing the studies I've seen about violent criminals, and to every single one of them, to a man and to a woman, what they did happened to them or somebody close to them. They lived in an environment where that sort of stuff was going on. And so they just adapted to it. They adapted the posture that the nervous system determined was the right posture. And in that situation, it probably was. You know, you're living in a war zone, you got to be a little warrior-like, right? So, I mean, that's the way until you can awaken from it. It was just really stunning to me reading the book In the Realm of the Hungry Ghosts by Gabor Mate, which is all about addictions. He worked for decades in the worst slums in Vancouver, working with addicted people. He said there was not a single woman who was addicted, that had a serious addiction that he worked with, who had not been sexually assaulted and molested when she was young. The men had all had violence happen to them when they were young. With the women, it was all sexual. With the men, some of it was sexual, but it was all violent. It all had that happen, and the end result was this incredible disconnection that led the craving for something, a craving that they'd kill themselves before they wouldn't take that hit. And it indicates the role, and a certain amount of compassion can arise. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. And it's not to say you don't protect yourself, you don't do what you need to do, but it's a way bigger picture than we realize. And our capacity to deal with it, our capacity to be fully present with it, is in direct relation to how much inquiry we've done that has peeled away the artificial layers so you have access to inner resources. That's what inner inquiry is about, right? If it starts becoming an escape, I'm avoiding this kind of problem, you're not doing inquiry. You're some other kind of religion or spirituality. You are not doing non-dual inquiry. There's no room for that in there. This is utterly, the purpose is a liberation to be fully present with life as it is. It is not an escape from it or an avoidance of it. So I hope that helps, Waltz. Thank you for that. Great question. How are we doing on time? Oh, we're good. We're good. Oh, wow. We are out of questions. So more questions. We still got some time. Unless you guys are all like totally content. You all got it. We're all walking on water now. Nazrin, hi G. My dreams sometimes have an effect on how I feel during the day. Well, of course. Do my dreams try to tell me something? Sometimes. But, you know, any experience you have, you know, the whole nature of trauma is the experience just doesn't pass through, right? It gets stuck, right? So, you know, if you're having a dream and it's continuing to affect you during the day, it's time for you to sit back focus within, and allow that energy to move through you. If there is, uh, if there is uh, something that needs to be said there, and sometimes there is, sometimes it is a message from deep within you. The only way you're going to know it is if you don't analyze it, but if you actually spend some time with it, right? Be with it, see what it has to offer. And if you create that safe space, the message will either come through and you'll get it, or that energy will dissipate, right? Because it's no longer needed and you're not sustaining it by anything, right? As long as it's still there, it means you haven't actually accepted it. You're resisting it, so you're pushing it away. That's why I say, turn your attention towards it. Infinity coaching. Hey, you skipped over my question twice. Okay, I'm going to go back. I'm sorry. I'm looking back right now to see if I can find it. There we go. I found it. You don't need to tell me again. At 54 and many ups and downs, feel like I have to be utterly authentic, share my creations like crazy, help others, offer my coaching, and trust my clients will find me. No nasty marketing. Will it work? Yes. Yes, it is energetic. You know, the quality of life, the things we attract into our life is energetic. You don't need to do anything except be authentic. Now, being authentic also means you may have to accept the practical necessities of this moment, in which case you may need to have a website, you know, have some flyers. I mean, if your clients are all online, you have some kind of presence where they can find you. If you're local, if you're meeting with people like in an office and that sort of thing, you know, just local events and stuff so people can find you. Never ever say it has to be that way. I have to do this, or I don't have to do that. It's never like that. I'd say I'm not going to do marketing. I'm going to get the clients. Could work. Some people will say if you don't do the marketing, nothing's going to happen. And if you buy that and you don't do the marketing or the right amount of marketing, I mean, it becomes very vague as to what you're supposed to do and what you're not. You'll experience that it doesn't, right? So it does come down to our view of it, our beliefs about it, our assumptions about it are what it's experiencing. But I take issue with you saying no nasty marketing. No, don't do any nasty marketing. You know, the kind of thing is, make them feel uncomfortable. They got a problem. You got the solution, scarcity marketing and all that kind of stuff. Don't do that. But if you look at it simply as this is who I am, and this is what I have to offer you, it's part of the self-expression. This is the benefit I want to bring to you. This is the contribution I want to make. Then telling that story, right, isn't nasty marketing. It's part of the self-expression. I can help you. I want to help you. And, and so take away the pejoratives about marketing and all that. And believe me, there's plenty of crap, right? I got sick of it to the point where I completely withdrew from that. And what happened beautifully when I did that, I just completely let go of it for a little bit. You all saw that. I less classes of it last year, where I let it unfold. And eventually what came around is doing things by donation. Also, I'm doing a whole lot more classes again, but I feel much more integrity with who I am and what I offer. But it's not like I'm not doing I'm not doing any nasty marketing, right? I'm avoiding those things they say, a $200, $2 million value, here's for only $19.99. I'm not doing any of that kind of stuff. But I'm trying to present in a succinct way what I have to offer that gives people an opportunity to look at it, especially if they're going to spend some money. And in these day and time, look, when you offer coaching and spirituality and the like, to you and I, this is an essential, right? This is right up there with food and shelter, right? But for many people, it's luxury. It's a luxury. I can't afford to work on myself. I got to pay my bills and that sort of thing. So it becomes a matter priorities. So you're simply communicating who you are, what you're about, and what you can do for them, and that's it. And you say you want to share your creations like crazy, help others, offer your coaching, and trust your clients will find you. Um, yep, and you can hold up a light and say, I'm here. I'm here to be found. 90% of it is here. 90% of it is that really having that trust. But to really have that trust, you have to break down and see through all the beliefs about that have accumulated in a lot of people's mind over a long period of time. All the people that say, you got to do it this way. If you don't do it this way, you fail. You got to take massive action. If you don't take massive action, you'll fail. You failed, you didn't take enough action, or you didn't allow enough, or whatever. There's always some reason. None of those are actually true. You individually need to find a way of engaging with others, letting others know about you that is completely in integrity with you and your message and what you have to offer. And that's the best thing I can say about that. It's very, very important, and I certainly understand it. At 54, many ups and downs. Yeah, you want to be authentic, and you want to share your, and that's very natural. That's it's part of the phase of life of moving into elderhood, which becomes less and less about householding and getting and building, and it's more about legacy and perpetuity and humanity as a whole. So I hope that helps you, Infinity Coaching, and I apologize for overlooking at it. I'm glad I was able to go back and find it. Chuck Ash, what's the difference between mind and awareness? Well, a mind is what's aware of the mind. What is the mind, right? Yes, it's very intimate. It's very close. I mean, it's like right here all the time, right? We're listening to it constantly. But that's what it is. It is thought. The mind is a word that designates the flow and patterns of thought, right? Thought being kind of like this individual thing, the way a letter is the individual component of a word, right? Well, what's the word? Is it a thing that creates letters? No, it's just an aggregate of the letters that makes a word, which makes sentences, right? And so ultimately, you don't get a paragraph or a book that's creating paragraphs and sentences and words and letters and sounds, right? And all of it is just kind of bubbling up from the other direction, right? So mind is nothing but a word we've used to designate a very complex, rich process of the flow of thought, right? It's very valuable, very useful. I'm doing it. I'm using it right now to allow words to come out. But notice that those thoughts, none of them, which means mind, in its sum total, could be there were there no one aware of it. Thoughts don't think themselves. They're not sentient. Right? So there's an awareness of thought, and the awareness is there watching thoughts come and go, right? That thoughts go by very, very quickly. And yet that which is aware of those thoughts isn't going by very, very quickly. As a matter of fact, it's the stable background against which you can even see them going. So that's the difference. Awareness is consciousness. And mind is just one of the many things of which we are conscious. It is the content of consciousness. And just don't mistake it. It's not a thing, right? Any more than a word is a thing. It has a certain form that has arisen, but that form is not a solid objective thing. And mind is not either. Mind is not thinking. Even when that's my mind doing that, it's not really accurate, right? There's a habitual function happening, right? And that habitual function is what we call mind. So I say, my mind always does that, which just means there's a habit pattern of thought that has been consistently moving in that direction. Me now being aware of it, not following with that, but staying aloof from it, the energy that has sustained it heading in that direction has to eventually just fade because it's not self-sustaining. The mind does not sustain itself. Thought does not sustain itself. It doesn't think itself. Can't. That which is aware of it is neither the thinking, nor the thought, nor even the thinker. The thinker is just a collection of thoughts. It's just another word we made up. So is that clear? Awareness is impossible to define, but we all know what it is. Right? It's like, everybody knows what falling in love is. You knew it the first time. You knew what it was the first time. Nobody had to tell you. You just know. Awareness, that which just knows. And nothing can exist without it. I mean, at least for you. But, don't worry about the universal. For you, right? You're not aware of simply doesn't exist. And if that awareness was not there, you would not exist. It would be oblivion, because it's just be what? Nothing. That would be nothing. Jags. GP, I was wondering about your past. How did you come to inquire so deeply within yourself? Was it immense suffering or just a curiosity of truth? It was a curiosity for truth that started with immense suffering. Eventually, the actual sweetness of the truth itself became so intoxicating that I was kind of sold. I was drunk on it, right? I couldn't get enough. But it started with, the sufferings I was talking about earlier, being, tied into bed. My mother was mentally ill. And so there was no love, there was never a sense of being calm. There's never a sense of, I was told it wasn't my home, right? I was not welcome, right? It was made plainly clear. It wasn't even just insinuated. So there was no sense of stability. There was no sense of being loved, which of course, because we expect to be loved, it's just immense trauma and suffering, a suffering that I then perpetuated. Even after awakening at 19 years old, I perpetuated the suffering because I did not understand how it was created. But at the same time, with that awakening, just came an insatiable appetite to know the truth, to know what had happened, know what this was all about. And as as it got older and matured, it became more about helping others as well. And I just fell in love with it. I just fell in love with knowing. I think it actually takes both. Just suffering makes us want to just alleviate suffering, and when the suffering is alleviated, we go, oh, phew, good, and we kind of like fall asleep on a different level. If it's just a curiosity about truth, it can become intellectual. It can become more. More of the inquiry is more in the mind. But when the two of them combine, there's an opening of the heart that then you have this beautiful balance between precise analysis, what Atmananda called higher reasoning, and just the desire for heart, the desire for love that is the nature of the heart, and it's the masculine and feminine principles. They converge. So that answers it for you, Jags. Ben Tannehill, hey GP, I've been doing much inquiry, and many aspects of Ben are falling away. I used to be an alcoholic, gave that up, but it transferred to chocolate and caffeine, struggling to give up those addictions. The growing stillness is making them even more obvious. Any thoughts? Many thanks for your work. Yeah, forget about the addictions, and don't make them into an issue. Don't make a story about them. The growing stillness will take care of them. And I'm not quick when people talk about these things. I'm not quick to say, oh yeah, we got to get rid of this. We got to free you from all of that. First off, addiction is just part of human nature. We can't help. It's not one thing, it's another, right? It can be shopping. It can be something really serious like heroin or crack, right? Or it can be something like, shopping, or, Gabor Mate is a guy I really admires. The psychologist who worked in Vancouver, he says his was buying classical music. Even when he didn't need it or didn't listen to it, it was just, and it looks on the surface, oh, this is a very wonderful thing to do. So it was an addiction, right? So are we going to completely overcome addictions? I'm not sure, right? But while it's there, you know, I love the fact St. Paul referred to this thorn in his side, that it didn't matter how much he came to know, how far he surrendered, this thing was still there. I think some of the times these things come upon us and they stay because they are the prod that keeps us going. They keep us from falling back asleep. As long as you see this tendency of the mind to fall into addictive patterns and that it just doesn't go away, it reminds you, it forces you to remain vigilant. So don't struggle to give up the addictions, because if you do, if you manage through struggle to give up the addictions, the ego can actually get inflated, pat itself on the back and see how good it is. And I've seen people, you know, that sort of, there's nothing more annoying than a reformed drunk, right? Not completely true, of course, but you kind of get the picture that, well, I've overcome that. I'm better than that now. If it doesn't grow out of the genuine insight into your true nature, it's okay if another one appears to keep prodding you, right? We need the annoyance of the ego. You know, once had a beautiful vision. I was sitting there, just complete open heart. I was everything. And there sitting next to me was this furry little ugly thing that was the ego. And I realized I need you. If I'm going to fully get to Buddhahood, I need this hey, annoying me. I need this little curmudgeon inside of me. So don't think of it as being some kind of a plague or some horrible thing and you're some horrible person and you should have overcome this by now. That's all the way the mind turns it against you. The deeper you go in this, the more you realize that all of this, every single detail of it, is working you towards your ultimate, final, total awakening. So these are not your enemies. They are your friends. You have no enemies. It's all you. Does that help, Ben? Don't worry about that. Don't worry about the addictions. They're there. You know they're there. Allow them to be there as long as they are needed. If they're not needed anymore, they won't show. So still keep growing in stillness. Keep doing the inquiry. To whom are these addictions appearing? Who am I identifying with that makes these things so powerful? It makes me so embarrassed of them, makes me so wanting to resist them. Who is that? And is not all of this, the addiction, the addictive patterns, the addictive person, the one trying to get rid of the addictive person, the spiritual person trying to be free of that, is not all of that an image, a picture on the movie screen of the mind? And is it not all being witnessed by the awareness that is not touched by any of it? Let yourself return there. And believe me, you start turning outward and it's all heavenly and pleasant. Oh, you're going to want to keep going. Oh, let's go back. Let's go to heaven. This is great. Let's have a great experience. Let's have a blissful experience. But when you start turning outward, when you start getting smacked around, ooh, you start coming back in. You go, thank you. Thank you for reminding me that this is what's important. This is where I have to be. That I'm willing and able to work at this level of surrender and engagement. How is that, my friend? Let's see, Arby, my mind keeps going to unwanted thoughts. For example, my partner might be cheating on me. I try to think positive, but it's not working. Nope. It doesn't. Not with a lot of force. You know, visualize till the veins pop out of here, right? It just keeps popping up. I don't want to manifest this. How do I stop it? Thanks. Stop trying. Heard a great quote the other day. The best way to go to hell is to resist going to hell. Right? Notice you've got a huge story about these thoughts, the unwanted thought. First off, a story that the thought is unwanted, which is another thought. Oh, here's the thought. Oh, I shouldn't have this thought. I want to have this thought. Then it gets even more bitter because there's this other thought, this idea, the law of attraction kind of thing that says, oh, it's going to manifest as that. Well, let me ask you a simple question. In your life, how much of what you feared was going to happen actually happened? Probably a minuscule amount. So if that was true, that my fear of it makes it made manifest, it should be consistently true. And it hasn't been, right? I'd say 98% of the time, it doesn't happen. We find the fear was completely ungrounded. So throw that idea out, that it's going to manifest and I have to be positive. The moment you say I have to be positive, what's going to happen? You're going to notice every negative thought that arises. Don't think about elephants in pink tutus. Don't think about it. Don't think about it. What's the one thing? What's on your mind? You have to think about it to know what not to think about, right? What you do is you go, oh, this entire thing is a fraud. It's a joke, right? The thought's there, fine. If the thought comes up and you have no story that gives it power, where does it go? Right? If you go, oh my God, it's got authority, it's got power, I've got to not think it. You might as, put more fuel in the car, right? Plug that baby in, turn that fan on, right? It's going to just kind of keep going. So you don't have to stop the thoughts. You have to stop the idea you have about those thoughts and the importance of them. And they're just thoughts popping up. And the thoughts pop up. Yes, they come according to a pattern. There's a deep feeling inside all of us, right? A fear of being rejected. We want relationship. We want them to be stable. We want to be loved and accepted, of course. So you have a partner and you're afraid that he or she may be cheating on you. That'll seem to have some authority because it strikes deep, it very much in our childhood, where to be rejected, to be not accepted, really did mean life and death. Well, it doesn't mean that anymore. It's painful, something like that, but it doesn't really mean that way. And thinking that thought doesn't make it happen. It doesn't. There's no connection whatsoever. Right? So you can begin to dismantle all the fears you have around it until they're seen to be complete fabrications of the mind. It's just developed this story over time, and the story isn't true. And you can see that it's not true. So I'm gonna speed up a little bit because we have really run out of time. So you're not going to manifest it. So just drop that thought. You're not going to manifest it. There's no such thing as a thought that has the power to make manifest. Only you do. Right? It's not the thought that does it. So take the power away from it. Right? You don't have to change your thought. You don't have to make them positive. The positive ones will just come because you're inviting them when you're no longer obsessed with the negative one. Right? It's just a thought. And that it's unwanted is another thought. My partner might be cheating on me is another thought. I've got to think positive is another thought. It's not working. It's another thought. It keeps popping up is another thought. I don't want to manifest this is another thought. How do I stop this? Another thought. You can see all of those thoughts have the same kind of signature about them, don't they? They arise from a sense that I am actually not who I really am. I am limited. I am mortal. I am unsafe. The universe is against me. It's very much the deep childhood wounds that we all received. So I hope that's enough for you to work with. Infinity says, yes, thanks, GP. Lovely answer, Sav in Paris. Love GP. Thank you. You are wealth. Lovely. Thank you, says Ben. All right, last question. Right, last question for today. Pharaoh Mans says, hi, GP, quick question. Good. I've been inquiring into what is the source of the I. How do I find that place where it arises from? I realize the I is the primal thought which creates the other thought. I try staying with the feeling I, but then before I can get any answer, a headache ensues and I end up falling asleep. Okay. Well, where is it that they arise from? You. That's where it's arising. Whatever you are, whatever consciousness is, that's where arising. Trace anything, any thought back, and it simply appeared. It appeared in this space. Now, because we're so used to thinking of ourselves and others and stuff as being things, we think we're going to find something that is giving rise to thought, right? Instead of thoughts spontaneously appearing simply within the space itself, with the empty space itself. And of course, yes, that thought I am is the primal thought. And it too is secondary. Because obviously, before the thought I am, even the feeling I am can arise, you have to be first, right? Couldn't arise if you weren't there first. So the real absolute you is even prior to I. It's prior to the sense I am. But the sense I am is the firstborn of the absolute. It's kind of the absolute conceiving itself, you might say. There's really no good words for this. It's the spontaneous arising for the infinitude of being. And the I is the creative power of the universe, right? I am that I am. And God, the I am, said, let there be light. The entire universe arises out of that sense of I am. Matter of fact, the I am and the universe are one. So whatever there prior, I mean, are you not there looking at what is there prior? Now you can't see it, you can't articulate it, you can't say anything about it because it is completely without form. It is completely without any kind of attributes. It is unknowable as an object in and of itself. It is only knowable because you are it. Now, are you not the one who watches every thought arise? So then where does it arise from? You. Whatever you are is giving rise to the thought I am, and you are prior to the I am. That I am then can arise, make universes. Many universes can identify, disidentify, can do all sorts of things. The I am is basically the God principle of creation. It is Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu. It is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. All of it arising out of the absolute, the transcendent, that which cannot be known or articulated. The absolute, invisible, transcendent that shines through is the form, and the form becomes transparent to it. We see the absolute in the form that we behold, like we see music in the song. We see beauty in that which is beautiful, right? So how do I find that place? You're looking as if it is a place, some place you're going to look and there it is. Any place you look and see will itself be arising in there. So where's the place? You. It's arising from you. You're the absolute. You're the self. You're the primal. You're the fundamental witness. You are the ultimate subject. It can't be coming from anywhere else. And any place you can spot where it appears to be coming is itself coming up in front of you. And so we get back to the most amazing reality. You cannot perceive yourself. You can only be yourself. Thank you, GP. If it's not an object, then how do I know when inquiry is complete? Because the need to have an object will no longer be there. All objects will still be there, but the true recognition will simply be self-evident. Then you're complete, and you know it. It's like, how will I know when I'm in love? Oh, you just know. Nobody has to tell you. Anne, thank you. Never get tired of listening to you and your wisdom. Well, thank you, Anne. Suketa Patel, wow, that was so helpful. Wonderful. Good, good, good. Nazrin, thank you. Thank you, GP. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay. Once again, we have come to the end. Again, gpwalsh.com/IR2019. And I'll put it on the video as well. I'll be doing, it's the replay of what I did on Thursday, and I'll be doing it again live on Tuesday at different times to try to accommodate different time zones. But this course, Inner Reconciliation, is not strictly non-dual. That's where it comes from, that its essence, but it is my attempt to help explain, to really come to understand how this all happened, the arising of a sense of a separate self, and make you see that it's not your doing, it's not your fault, it's never actually even touched you. But within this picture, the sense of a separate self has arisen with all sorts of identifications and problems and suffering, all sorts of things, but you are not that separate self. You are the self. All right, everybody, thank you. Until next time, I love you all. Namaste.